I'm Dr. Jeff Boehm, CEO of the Marine Mammal Center, the world's largest marine mammal hospital. Welcome to our home. It's from here that we advance our mission of global ocean conservation through the rescue and rehabilitation of marine mammals, scientific research, and education. The center serves as the primary responder for 600 miles of the 840-mile California coastline. We rescue as many as 1,800 animals in a single calendar year. So with the responsibility for 2/3 of the coastline, we have a really intimate understanding of how the ocean can play a significant role in our fight against climate change, which makes this the perfect backdrop for the launch of the California Coastal Caucus. The Marine Mammal Center has been a strong advocate for the creation of the caucus. In fact, we asked our congressional delegation to form it, given the vital importance of the California coastline for California's economy and its ecology. Two of the founders of the caucus are with us today, Congressman Ted Lieu, Congressman Jared Huffman. They're here to talk to us about why this is the moment for the caucus and why it's so important. Thank you both for joining us here today. I want to especially thank the Marine Mammal Center's representative in Congress, Jared Huffman. Jared has been a wonderful supporter of the Marine Mammal Center for quite a number of years, and we appreciate that greatly. He's also a leader in all things environment. He chairs the House Natural Resources Committee on water, oceans, and wildlife. Welcome, Jared. Thank you for your leadership. And a special thank you to you, Congressman Ted Lieu. Your 33rd district runs from Malibu down to the South Bay. A lot of our animals are just off the coast on their way up to our waters. Your leadership as co-chair of the caucus is significantly appreciated, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that we wouldn't have the California Coastal Caucus if it was not for your leadership. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to now turn it over to Carol Costello, who is going to host our program here this morning and be our moderator. Carol is a former anchor and national correspondent at CNN and an award-winning journalist. She currently serves as senior advisor and a lecturer in journalism at Loyola Marymount University. Thank you for being here, and thank you for hosting today. The coast is yours.
And a beautiful one it is, right? Thank you very much, Jeff.
You're welcome.
I'm so excited to take part in this panel. I've covered climate change issues for a long time in my career, and it can be frustrating, and I'm sure you all know what I'm talking about. I want to quickly reintroduce our lawmakers today, and of course, Dr. Field, our marine scientist. So Congressman Ted Lieu, he represents California's 33rd Congressional District. He has established himself as a leader on the environment, cybersecurity, civil liberties, and governmental ethics. And Congressman Jared Huffman is here as well. He reps California's 2nd Congressional District, which of course spans the north coast of California. Congressman Huffman is a progressive leader and an environmental expert, and he's been instrumental in defending our coastlines from offshore oil and gas drilling. And Dr. Cara Field is the medical director here at the center. She earned the status of diplomate with the specialization in aquatic marine medicine, one of only 30 veterinarians to earn that distinction. Her research, mentoring, and hard work is paving the way for the next generation of marine scientists and veterinarians. So we're eager to hear what you have to say today. Before we dive into the questions, though, I want Congressman Ted Lieu to stand up and explain more about this California Coastal Caucus and why now is the time to establish such a caucus.
Sure. Thank you, Carol, for your question. And on behalf of Congresswoman Julia Brownlee and Congressman Jared Huffman and I were so honored to announce the formation of the California Coastal Caucus, composed of members in California who have coastal districts. We see the effects of climate change not only in having more extreme weather events such as wildfires, but also its effect on our oceans and its effect on making marine mammals sicker. And I'm in this beautiful district of Congressman Huffman, just toured the Marine Mammal Center and the great work that they do to help make marine mammals healthier. And we need to have much more emphasis on the coast and how climate change is affecting the coast. That's one reason we started this California Coastal Caucus.
So will this have teeth in Congress? I mean, is this something that will make other lawmakers stand up and take notice?
So it's pretty cool when you can write a letter by yourself, but it's much cooler if you can have a dozen members of Congress join you in that letter or in a bill. And that's one of the reasons for the caucus, is to have us work together as a group.
And Congressman Huffman, as you know, California is sort of ground zero for climate change and all of the problems that that entails. I mean, in Napa, winemakers are putting sunscreen on their grapes to keep the grapes from turning into raisins. In Mendocino, they have a water shortage. They're having to truck in drinking water because of the drought conditions we have in our state. I know that government can do a lot to mitigate climate change, but it takes all of us, right, to change our behaviors. So I'll ask you the toughest question first. How can we, I don't want to use the word force, but maybe it's time. How do we force people to change their behavior?
Well, first, Carol, let me thank you for leading us in this conversation and for all of your good work. I'm honored to be with you, and a huge thanks to my colleague Ted Lieu for really spearheading the formation of this Ocean Caucus, which is long overdue in the Congress. This is a moment where the oceans are uniquely impacted by the climate crisis that you're alluding to, but the oceans can also be part of the solution, and so I hope we'll have a chance to talk about both sides of that equation. In terms of the behavioral side of how we're going to tackle climate change, of course human behavior is part of it, and here at the Marine Mammal Center, which by the way I'm super proud of, and I hope I get a chance to brag about everything they do in the course of our conversation, because just a global leader on protecting our oceans and the great animals that inhabit them. But plastics has been something that the Marine Mammal Center has done a great job spotlighting, reducing our reliance on plastic, just getting a lot less plastic into our products, into our economy, is part of how we need behavioral change.
Is it time to put into place more bans on making products using plastic?
I think so. I think we need to go upstream as far as we can, and the bans that we see through local government. Ted Lieu and I had a chance to do some of that when we were state legislators. All of it needs to happen, and we need corporate social responsibility.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm like,
sure.
It's just so upsetting after the UN climate report, right, Dr. Field, right? So it can't just be California that enacts these kinds of laws to force people to change their behaviors or to force manufacturers to be more environmentally conscious. It has to be the entire country. So how do you bring the entire country on board?
That's a great question. So when Jared and I were in the California State Legislature, this is when both of us had less white hair. We were warning about climate change and working on these issues. We also realized that to really tackle this issue, we have to have America do what California has done, and then the world to do what California has done. That's one reason both of us ran for Congress, is because we understood it had to be a national prerogative and to make it a national priority. And so that's what we keep working for in Congress, to make sure we get climate change laws passed.
Because the UN climate report was pretty dire and scary. Is the time to really enact the laws to force a change in behavior now? Is the time now?
Absolutely. And so the Build Back Better bill that Congress is working on will have significant investments for clean energy and for other climate change provisions. And that's something we're trying to push through Congress right now.
I just wondered, Dr. Field, because you're on the front lines, right? You see the effects on sea life with the warming temperatures in the ocean. And you've probably read that climate report. So how did you feel when you read it? Did you just go, yeah?
It was a bit more than yeah, but it reinforced what we've already been learning from these animals. As a veterinarian and a scientist, when my job is to help animals that wash ashore and all throughout California and other places, and I see the diseases that they're coming in with, that really strikes at the heart and really gets to the cause of what's causing them to wash ashore. Many times it's not because of any natural process, but it's because of human-induced changes. So climate change especially, a raise in sea level, that loss of critical breeding habitat for seals that reproduce on rookeries right on the water's edge. Sometimes the toxins, whether they're natural from harmful algal blooms in the ocean or human produced, which is even more critical. And to see animals wash ashore with disease that is preventable, that we could have changed and that we could actually address is a huge motivator for me and anybody really who see these animals in trouble to take action.
I just want to read a few comments from the UN Secretary General about the climate report. Global warming is dangerously close to spiraling out of control, and the seas will rise no matter what we do. So this very much is, I hate to use the phrase, but the new normal, right? So, Dr. Field, how do you adjust and how do you continue to find hope that you'll be able to save these animals?
I think when I see animals come into the hospital, get diagnosed with a treatable condition and release them, that alone gives us hope. So we know that they have another chance at life. But for the animals that don't make it, that is really the warning sign. That is the call. And all of us, by getting the word out to people to pay attention to what's happening, how we're changing the world, is what helps me get through every day, dealing with the animals that have, that are riddled with cancer or that are having seizures from toxins. And I know that consumers can make a difference. We absolutely have. It's in every single one of our power to make changes at home, to buy sustainably, buy locally, take action, even small actions to help protect our oceans and really our entire planet as a result.
Both of you lawmakers have devoted your congressional careers to climate change and to finding solutions, right? And President Biden promised he would fight climate change. And in many ways he has. But some of the messages he sends are confusing. For example, gas prices are really high. So he's asked OPEC to produce more oil so the gas prices go down, while at the same time urging all of us to buy electric cars. I think environmentalists like Dr. Field say, what? Like, how do you, that just doesn't make sense. Shouldn't the message from the president just be, we have to stop using fossil fuels, gas prices are high, but we're going to adjust our behaviors and we're going to buy electric cars and it's going to solve so many problems for us?
Yeah, so Jared, I thought, gets the hard questions. But my view is we absolutely have to transition to clean energy vehicles and to alternative energies, the energies that don't go away. But there is a transition period, and you can't just all of a sudden tell American people, some who have varying degrees of income, that all of a sudden they have to pay a lot more out of pocket immediately. So you can't put that sort of shock on people. You have to do it with a transition period. I think that's what President Biden is trying to do to make sure gas prices don't spike.
And Carol, I am far less concerned about how the existing fossil fuel producers are urged not to game the system and to look out for consumers than I am about really boldly transitioning us away from fossil fuel. So far more important than what he may do on gas prices today with OPEC is what he does on the leasing of our public lands and these offshore resources for new fossil fuel development. There shouldn't be any at this point. And so to me, that's that's going to get attention. There's going to be cognitive dissonance inferred from some of these things because it's near term, but the long term and the big things are what matter.
Is, the Biden administration working on those bigger things?
They are, against a lot of resistance and litigation and controversy, yeah.
I think what some people are worried about is if Republicans take control of the Congress, that these big initiatives won't get done and there'll be a reversal again. Do you worry about that?
Absolutely. We saw that every Republican voted against the American Rescue Plan that really helped America get back on track, and we see them now opposing the Build Back Better bill that has a lot of climate change funding and provisions. So hopefully we'll get some bipartisan support, but as a party they generally oppose climate change bills.
So focus back on California, Dr. Field. Really disturbing. Scientists found maybe hundreds of thousands of barrels of DDT that were dumped there decades ago that are most likely leaking and have been leaking poisonous, right? And it's indestructible stuff, DDT. It doesn't dissolve in water. And you are seeing the real life effects of that perhaps here at the Marine Mammal Center. Can you describe that for us?
Absolutely. The effects of our long years of dumping chemicals and pesticides into the ocean is absolutely caught up with us. And it's manifested so strongly in sea lions that wash ashore that are riddled with cancer. And we've found out the science is replete. It's there. Animals, these sea lions that have widespread cancer, it's all associated with DDT in particular, but several other chemicals that are human-made. That really gives you pause. These sea lions are sharing our waters. We eat the same food. We need to open our eyes and really look closely at that and change what we do and how we work, whether it's through cleanup, whether through making the case for it, but also seeing these emerging diseases. We have to change our behavior. We can't continue to create a world where toxins and pesticides are poisoning our oceans, not just for the animals, but for ourselves.
Do you have patients here now at the center that are suffering from cancers you can't quite explain?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, just yesterday, we had an animal arrive here in our hospital, and we euthanized her because we could see just in immediately through our diagnostic tools that her body was riddled with cancer. And it almost always is the exact same kind of cancer that's caused by these pesticides and by a virus. And in her case, because it was so widespread, there's nothing that we could do for her, and the kind thing was to euthanize. But every animal has a story to tell, so because of examining all these animals after they die or are euthanized, that's how we build the story, that's how we investigate, and that's how we find the cause. And that's led to the discovery of all those hundreds of thousands of barrels that people weren't aware were there. And that now allows us to move forward and take action and hopefully improve that situation.
And I know that both of you toured the center. What surprised you as you toured the center and saw the patients here?
Well, just on the DDT issue, I was surprised to learn about the 20% of sea lions you're getting that have that cancer. And the doctor informed us that it's because they eat the fish that also had some of the DDT. It turns out that human beings eat fish too. And so that's deeply troubling. So we've been working with some of the researchers down there looking at this DDT. Now they've learned these new facts, we're going to coordinate with the center and with Congressman Huffman and look at potentially studies as to whether we've got human beings now being impacted by this DDT.
Yeah, because if we eat the right, things like breast cancer, right, could be caused by...
The toxins get into your body and they can damage your DNA, and that can result in all kinds of different diseases, things we might not even suspect. So yeah, it is incumbent on us to look a little deeper.
So the cleanup of that site. It happened decades ago off the Southern California coast. So I guess they're 3,000 feet underwater. So it's not exactly like an easy task to go down and get them all. So
We don't even know how far it spreads. It's the tip of the iceberg, what we know so far.
Just to help people understand a little better what happened, these companies, when DDT was banned, right, because it was too dangerous to use, they just took it all out in barrels and dumped it into the ocean.
Well, that's after they were forced to stop just discharging it into the ocean through pipelines. So once that was shut down, they had to start putting it in barrels, and they were permitted by the authorities in our government to just take it out and drop it. And that's where it lies. But we don't know the full extent of how many, and we suspect that there are surely other sites around the country as well.
So to do a thorough investigation, that takes a lot of money, right?
It does. So we've been working with researchers on that exact issue.
So how does that process work? Like to try to identify the problem from the get-go and then to kind of figure out how to clean up the site, because it's a Superfund site in essence,
So
right?
the researchers have gotten samples, and now we're trying to get money to do base additional research on those samples. And then there's the big questions you allude to. What do we do if we figure out it is leaking all this DDT?
Right, and I just want to make it clear that, the poisoning of these fish through these chemicals doesn't just affect people in Southern California, because fish swim, wildlife swims, right? That's why in Northern California you're finding sea life infected with cancer that maybe came from there. So how do you get people all across the country to understand that?
One of the things I think we're betting on is that given enough clear and compelling information, people will do the right thing, and their elected representatives will do the right thing. That's why that IPCC report is so important. That's why the work that the Marine Mammal Center is doing to really reveal all the details of this toxic threat to marine mammals is so important.
So, Dr. Field, I'm sure when you heard about how many barrels of this stuff were underneath the ocean, you probably freaked out.
I was extremely surprised and alarmed. I'd known about the chemicals for years because we've been studying the disease in sea lions for decades. So we've known that there has been a cause and association for many, many years. But finding out just how many barrels have been dumped, and many of them very close to shore, not where they're supposed to be dumped further offshore where it's been even more out of sight. But the animals are the proof, really. And, everybody knows somebody with cancer. Everybody knows that that's a disease that you want to try to treat and help. And everybody wants to understand the cause. So when we have a very precise cause right under our noses, that's when you kind of go, wow, yeah, we really need to fix this. This has been going on for decades.
So going back to changing behavior.
Yeah.
I don't think that most Americans understand the impact of that. So how do you make them understand enough to want to act, to want their taxpayer dollars to be used to clean this stuff up?
So it's true that in the past, human beings have done lots of bad things to the environment. And we can't change the fact that there are DDT barrels down there, potentially leaking DDT. So once we get the research done, I do think we need to find a fix to it. And Congressman Huffman and I and others will look at trying to find a fix. But there's also ways to just pass laws to stop bad practices from continuing in the future. And so the Marine Mammal Center has this exhibit of these nets that they just found in the stomach of whales. And so Congress has a bill that we want to become a law on banning drift nets that I authored and Congressman Huffman supported. We did get it through last term, but the former president did veto that. We don't think the current president will do that, so we're going to try again, and sometimes you just need to pass laws to change behavior.
And you probably have to do that fairly quickly now, right?
Well, we'll see what this window gives us, but politics can change. And I think, there's urgency to all of this, because who knows what the midterm election and gerrymandering and voter suppression and the general chaos of our political climate is going to bring.
Well, and I don't think you could underestimate that during the last administration, our environmental protections took a huge step backwards. And you're probably still dealing with the effects of that. So what's that been like?
Well, it keeps us very busy. We're going to be dealing with the effects of that for a long time to come, because not all of it is quickly undone. Some of it, was as easy as President Biden issuing his own executive order to undo a Trump executive order. But in other cases, they completed regulatory rulemakings. They actually passed laws in some cases. There's an attempt to drill in the Arctic Refuge, for example, because a mandate to drill in our nation's Arctic Wildlife Refuge was included in the Republican tax cut in 2017. That's not something we can change unless we pass a law that fixes it.
So what has that been like for lawmakers, just to deal with that and then to deal with the current issues that we're facing?
So as Congressman Huffman said, we've been busy, but we did pass some significant legislation, the American Rescue Plan, that really did help put people back in their jobs and kids into schools and shots in the arms. And now we're working on 2 additional bills, one of which is going to have significant climate change investments and clean energy investments. So we keep working, and as Congressman Huffman said, we don't know how big this window is, but we're in it right now, so we're going to try to get lots of things done for American people.
So Dr. Field, if you could have one resource to mitigate your problems here for your patients, if you could have anything you wanted, what would that be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I can think of so many things. I think support and awareness are the biggest keys to helping, not just helping animals, but helping our coast and thereby helping the animals and ourselves. If we stick our heads in the sand, we're just ignoring the problems. Nobody's aware that they're happening. Every single one of us has a capacity to make a difference. And whether you live here on the coast, in the Midwest, it doesn't matter. It all ties back to our planet that we live on. It's a lot more fragile than we thought. And I think people being aware and starting to make those changes, seeing that it's not just our representatives' problem. It's not just a United States problem. It's a world problem. And we all need to do better. And we can, even if those steps are really small. So I think that awareness and desire to change things is that would be my wish, that everybody could take home with them.
We just have a couple of more minutes, and I'd like to end the program with a few thoughts from our lawmakers. And I'm going to leave good news so that you can follow up on it, because public opinion polls show most Americans now see climate change as a major threat, and most agree that humans are partially to blame, and that's people both conservative and liberal. So that is a positive, right? So can both Congressman Lieu and Huffman talk about the challenges and the hope that you see?
Yeah, so thank you, Carol. The challenge is just right before us every day. We're having this conversation in the southern end of Marin County, right on the ocean. If you just drove a couple of miles from here, you'd be breathing smoky air right now because of the wildfires that are throughout much of California. And that's the part you can see in this climate crisis. There's so many parts of it that you don't see. And the Marine Mammal Center is here to help tell that story, because our oceans, if you just look at them, look beautiful. And I think that's part of our challenge as well. The ocean may be the trickiest part of this climate crisis. And the public thinks they're still beautiful and just fine, but they're really not. And marine mammals, as indicator species for a lot of the changes and problems in the ocean, are telling us a really important story that needs to get out there. So that's the challenge, but the opportunity is that people love our oceans. They love marine mammals. Public opinion is such a powerful thing, and I think, again, given good information, and I hope that our Ocean Caucus that Ted Lieu has helped spearhead in the Congress can help be part of this as well. We're counting on people to do the right thing.
I agree with everything that Congressman Huffman just said, and it's an honor to work with Jared and Congress, especially on the climate change legislation. I think their conversation has already shifted, to public opinion. And I know even among our Republican colleagues, I'd say 10, 15 years ago, you still had climate change deniers. Those are fewer and far between. And I remember last term we had a hearing where the ranking Republican member on the committee, his opening statement, we were doing climate change and national security. His opening statement basically acknowledged climate change and acknowledged that human beings were largely responsible. And I thought, wow, that's just a pretty big shift in perspective. Now the challenge is to get more Republicans to adopt that, and then we can get some bipartisan legislation through.
Hopefully so. Thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it. I want to throw it back to Jeff now to close our program, but such an interesting conversation. Here it comes.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thank you, Carol. I think for some people, environmental issues, climate change is still somewhat this esoteric thing. And what I'm delighted about is that at the Marine Mammal Center, with the patients that we care for, we're putting a face on these things. And we're giving the stories that are hopefully going to move the needle on folks' behavior as we've been talking about this past period. For me also, to have the California Coastal Caucus as a forum to be able to highlight and to discuss and debate and move forward these issues, it just gives me optimism and hope. And I just couldn't be more appreciative of the leadership demonstrated here today. I want to thank you, Dr. Field, for everything that you do for our community and for our patients. Congressman Huffman for your leadership, Congressman Lieu for your leadership, and Carol always for bringing together these points in wonderful conversation. Thank you very much.